The location of today's video. We're in Palm Springs, baby. Alright, morning guys. Bright and early this morning. So we got up about 6:30 today, had to pack a few things to get ready for today's trip. So the plan is we are going to go to Palm Springs, but we're going to make a special stop beforehand and visit Salvation Mountain. I'm really looking forward to today. We've got a lot of things that we want to see, a lot of things that we want to do. It's going to be a really hot day today as well. And especially because we're going to go to Palm Springs, which is like pretty much in the desert. It's going to be like 36 degrees. So yeah, really looking forward to today, and I'll speak to you when I get to the mountain. Alright guys, so just done a 3-hour drive from where I live in Anaheim. I'll just show you the dog as well. Hi. And just arrived at the Salvation Mountain, built by a man called Leonard Knight, I think.
Yeah.
Right? I think he took 30 years to build it, right?
28.
28 years. I think even Coldplay made a music video here, I think. After doing some hiking in the city, we've now decided to come out into the desert to Salvation Mountain. This man, Leonard Knight, he decided to build this mountain out of clay, I think, and then just like gallons and gallons of paint. He made it his life's purpose to build this mountain. To be honest, I don't really know a lot about the history or why he really decided to do this, but it just got me thinking about the importance of having purpose in your life. I think when you come to places like this, it helps you to kind of take a step back and get a bit of perspective. I think for me, just traveling and going to lots of different places and exploring the world, I love doing this stuff. It helps you to take a step back from life and just be able to think about things a bit differently, I guess. So yeah, definitely glad I made the 3-hour drive here. I mean, it wasn't just for this. I mean, we planning to go to Palm Springs, but this place was only just like another hour and a half from Palm Springs. So I thought I'd just start off by visiting Salvation Mountain first. So yeah, Salvation Mountain. So now we are going to head into the land of civilization and go for some lunch in Palm Springs, baby. Alright, so we've arrived in Palm Springs. It's pretty warm out here. I mean, after all, we are in the desert. Right, so we're just gonna make our way now over to Cheeky's to grab a light lunch. Then we'll go to the aerial tramway for some sights and also some poke hands. Tried to get most of the hiking out the way at the beginning of my trip because of the weather. It's gonna be ideal hiking conditions is when it's quite cool, like still sunny, but not too hot, because obviously when you're hiking, it's going to be really, really hot. And then I was planning towards the end of my trip, I'm going to be hitting the beaches. So we've got the hikes, we've got the desert, got the mountains, well, maybe it's 4 then, and then we've got the beaches. So trying to really see the best of what California has to offer, I guess. I guess there is one environment, I guess. Maybe probably that's the right word, which I'm making a conscious decision to not experience or go to. And that's like downtown LA. From my own research and even from the people I've spoken to, you're not really missing out on that much by not visiting downtown LA. Look, I do believe every city has its own uniqueness. Each city generally has its own vibe and they're not all the same. But having said that, I'm pretty confident and very comfortable on missing out, seeing what downtown LA is like. Here we are, guys. Cheeky's. Let's queue up. Right, so just finished our meal at Cheeky's. Food was amazing. Definitely would recommend this place if you ever visit Palm Springs. Talk about amazing. This place is amazing. I mean, it's just balmy weather, palm trees everywhere, and then you've got this nice mountain in the background. It's just so scenic. It just feels really good. You know, being here, I guess, just feels really, really good. I think now the plan is to walk back to my car, and we're gonna have to start making our way to our next destination. Alright, so we're at the station, the aerial tramway station. I'm going to buy some tickets. Just been informed that it's going to be a 2-hour wait. Yeah, going to have to figure out what I'm going to do for 2 hours. Right, seems we didn't have to wait after all, we were on standby. So we're now about to board the aerial tramway. The only problem is I didn't bring my coat. I mean, obviously, because it's like 35 degrees, right? But what I forgot was that we're actually going right to the top of the mountain, right? And it's like, they say it's 15 degrees, but it wasn't so right, but when they said there was snow. Right, so we're about to board. See you on the top. Alright, so we made it safe and sound. This place is amazing. 6,000 feet up. And the views are just incredible. See as far as the eye can see. It's just when you come up to spots like this, you can really appreciate how big this country is. Like vast lands, which obviously you just don't get that feeling when you're in England, for obvious reasons. It's a much smaller country. Scenery is just absolutely breathtaking. All right, so just got off the aerial tramway, reached the top of the San Jacinto mountain. We are like 6,000 or 7,000 feet up, and the views, I mean, I said the views were amazing when I went on the Hollywood sign hike, which they were, but I think this is like the next level. The views are amazing, especially when there's like clear skies and it's sunny and you can just literally see as far as the eye can see. But of course, you guys didn't really click on this video to look at the Salvation Mountain that I was trekking through earlier this morning, and nor did you click on this video to check out the awesome scenery from the aerial tramway. No, you guys clicked on this video so you could listen to me talk about some poker hands. So without further ado, let's dive into our first hand. There is an under the gun limp, and then the action folds to the hijack, who opens the pot to $20. We are next to act in the cutoff with pocket eights. So we decide to make the pretty standard flat call. The button then calls, big blind calls, and under the gun calls. So we are now 5 ways to the flop, which comes pretty decent. It comes ace, 8, 9, 2 clubs. So we flop ourselves bottom set here. Action then folds to me in the cutoff, and with a set, of course, we have a no-brainer bet. Maybe an argument could be made if we were in a much earlier position, we could actually mix in some checks for some check raises. But being in late position, i.e. cutoff / button, I think it's just more likely that the action is just going to check through if we decide to check on the flop. So with that in mind, we definitely want to put in a bet. So we put in a bet of $40, and then the button calls, and then the hijack also calls. So we are now 3 ways to the turn card, which comes an offsuit 6. Action now checks to me, And even though 10-7 does get there, there is still a whole bunch of other hands that we can get value from that we are also ahead of. So with that in mind, we put in a double barrel and we size up on the turn to $120. Big blind doesn't really think for too long before then making the call, and then the hijack then lets go. So we are now heads up to the river, and there's quite a few bad river cards here for our hand, but fortunately the river comes a dream card. It comes another 6. So we now boat up with a full house. I think he's only got like about a pot size bet behind left. So now we have a pretty clear jam now. I really don't like checking here, given Evelyn can have a lot of ace-x here that will just clearly check back. So we make a pretty straightforward jam, and then Villain goes deep into the tank. After like a minute or 2 minutes, Villain decides to make the call, and we show our hand, and it's good. Right, so very shortly after that hand, there is a new player that joined our table. This guy is, let's say he's a bit of a loose maniac. In this hand, there is an early position limp, and then the hijack then opens the pot to $20. The button, who is the loose maniac, also flat calls $20. Small blind calls $20 also. And then we look down in the big blind with ace queen offsuit. I think we have a pretty standard squeeze here. So that's exactly what we decide to do. We raise it up to $125. And the action folds to the button, who is the loose maniac, who's then like YOLO, and he just rips in the rest of his stack in between like $300 and $400. Small blind gets out the way, and of course, versus this player, we have a very, very easy call. So we're off to see all 5 cards. The flop comes like king high, turns a brick, the river comes an ace. Turns out we didn't even need the ace at all, because Villain showed ace deuce offsuit for top pair, but he had a weaker kicker. So we are going to drag in this pot.
Yeah, you son of a bitch.
Right, so moving swiftly on to the next hand, the action folds to the hijack, who is a regular player, and he opens the pot to $20. Action then folds to us in the big blind, and we look down at pocket kings. So we put in the raise to $90. Action then folds back to the hijack, who thinks for a while and then makes the call. I think we're both like $800 effective to start the hand. The flop comes pretty dangerous for our hand. It comes 10, 9, 7, 2 diamonds. And I think we have 2 black kings in the spot, so obviously not the ideal hand. So with that in mind, I decide to start with a check. And then Villain decides to go for a small bet on the flop to the tune of $65. When he chooses this sizing, I think he can also have a lot of hands like pocket jacks, maybe pocket queens. That's just kind of squeeze a bit more value from my ace-x hands that he's still ahead, but still not a flop that he would like so much as well, given how dynamic it is. So having considered all of the above, I decide to flat call the $65. Off to the turn, which is not a great card. It comes a queen of diamonds. The front door flush completes. Board is now 4 card to a straight. So we decide to check the turn, and then Villain pretty quickly decides to bet again, but he does bet smallish again, so he bets like $100. I think this is quite a nice bet sizing, especially against our hand, because with this bet sizing he can still rep some hands that we beat. I think for this sizing, I don't think we fold kings just yet. Obviously it would have been a lot easier if we had the king of diamonds as well. So I think kings without a diamond would be very close to the bottom of our continuing range in the spot. So we decide to continue with a call, and the river just gets better and better. It comes yet another queen. So now if he did have a hand which he was value owning himself with an ace queen, he's now improved to trip queens, which now beats us. The board has just turned out horrific for us. So of course we're going to check for a 3rd time. Now Villain decides to go deep in the tank, taking quite a bit of time before jamming, like over betting, like 1.5x pot, jamming his stack in there. And we waste very little time snap folding. I don't see him having the nut flush here. I think he has a boat that was hoping that we had the nut flush that was going to pay him off. So we're going to lose this hand with pocket kings. Right, so in this next fun hand, there is 2 limps early position, and then the hijack, who is a pretty tight player, makes quite a small open to just $15. And we look down on the button with 6-3 of diamonds. So facing such a small open, and we are on the button, deep stacked. Of course, we are going to make the call with 6-3 of diamonds. The small blind calls, big blind calls, the 2 early position limpers also call. So we are now 6 ways to the flop, which comes amazing. It comes 4, 5, deuce with 2 spades. We flop the nuts. Ashton folds to the under the gun limper, and he decides to put in a very small wager of $20 into a pot of 90. The other early position limper makes the call, and then the hijack, who was the pre-flop aggressor, then raises to $135. Ashton now folds to us on the button, and now we decide to take a little bit of time just to think about what's the best line to take here. With a hand as strong as the nuts, being in position and being super multi-way, at this point, I didn't think I had any worry about being able to win the hijack or the pre-flop aggressor's stack, and I think she only had about $400 to start the hand, so I was pretty confident I was going to be able to stack her. And I think I just wanted to see if I could maximize my value by just flat calling and not necessarily needing to kind of raise and drive out other flush draws from the early position players. So with that in mind, I decided to just continue with a flat call, hoping to set the trap. But unfortunately, all the other players behind us in the hand make the fold. So we are now going heads up with the nuts to the turn. And the turn comes like another brick. And then Villain quickly decides to just bet $100. So she now has like $300 left in her stack now, effective on the turn. At this point, you know, we're not trapping anyone anymore. I really don't think she's ever folding. So we just decide to jam the rest of our stack in. And sure enough, Villain makes the quick call. So we're off to the river, and the river then comes like another brick. I show my hand, and Villain is not very happy, obviously, to see my hand. And she actually flashed pocket aces. So yeah, it's pretty nice pot for us to be dragging in here with the 6-3 of diamonds. Right, so on to the next fun hand. We are under the gun and we look down at King Queen offsuit. Pretty solid hand, so we open up to $20. Action then folds to the hijack, who makes the call, and then it folds around to the big blind, who also makes the call. So we are now 3 ways to the flop, which comes pretty good. It comes King, Queen, Deuce with a flush draw. Ashton checks to me, and we have a pretty standard C bet here. We decide to put in a small bet of just $20, so 1/3 of the pot. The rationale for this is we've got this board completely crushed, and we definitely want to keep a lot of worse hands in here, like a King X or a Queen X that can improve, because if they don't improve, we have pretty massive implied odds here to win a huge pot. The hijack calls, and the big blind also calls, which is good news. So we're off to the turn, and the turn comes pretty magical. It comes another queen. So big blind now checks, and we now decide to go for a very sneaky check. We are now praying that the action doesn't check through. Fortunately for me, hijack now decides to bet $45. Big blind gets out of the way. The action is now back on us. So given stack sizes, we really can't call here if we want to give ourselves a chance to get stacks in by the river. Looking at the bet size of 45, I think for a while, and I decide to raise it up to $145. Villain then takes just a little bit of time before then flicking in the call. And now the river then comes yet like another brick, and now we have a pretty clear jam here. So that's what we do. We stick all our chips in, and then Villain starts going into the tank. Doesn't really like the situation too much, but fortunately for us, he has a hand that he just can't fold. So he decides to move all of his chips into the middle, and we share our hand, and it's good. Villain actually showed Queen Jack for trip queens. So yeah, really happy with the way we played our hand here. So it would seem that our session is going very swimmingly well until this hand. So there is a new player that joined our table, and just from the look of him, he does look like a pretty laggy player. For those of you who don't know what that means, it means a very loose, aggressive player. In one of his first few hands, he opens the pot from middle position to $25. Action then folds to us in the big blind, and we yet again look down at pocket kings. Versus this player type, and we both have like $600 to start the hand effective. I decided to 3-bet 5x to $125. Villain pretty much snap calls the 3-bet, and we are now heads up to the flop. And the flop comes 7-5-4. I decide to go for a check, and then villain wastes little time in jamming the remaining of his stacking for like $480. It's 2x pot jam. We're not folding, so we snap call. And to be fair, I'm not really sure what I'm up against, but I just know that I'm pretty much always ahead here. The dealer puts out the turn card, which comes like another brick, but then the river card comes a 3. Villain then shows his hand, and he has ace 6 of spades. So we lose this hand, which is the biggest hand that we've played so far, which is an over 1.2k pot. Right, so after losing that massive hand and licking our wounds, in the next hand we look down on the cutoff with king 10 offsuit. So we decide to open up to $20, hoping to try to win some of our chips back. The button makes the call, and the big blind, who was the villain from the previous hand, also makes the call. So we are now 3 ways to the flop, and the flop comes king 5-3 rainbow. Action checks to me. We have a pretty standard c-bet here. So I decide to bet 1/3 pot, which is $20. Button calls, and big blind also makes the call. And so we're off to the turn, which comes another 5. Action now checks back to me again. Given the small bet sizing on the flop, either villain could easily have a 5x here, but I think there's also a lot of other hands which we are still ahead of, like middling pocket pairs and worse king x, and also some ace 4 ace deuce type hands for like an overcard and a gut shot for the straight. I know this is probably a marginal spot, but on this occasion we decide to double barrel, so we decide to bet $60. The button then wastes little time before making the call, and big blind also makes the call. Depending on what the river is, I think most likely we would be looking to check back. So the river then comes an offsuit queen, which means we now chop against all other worse king x hands. Big blind checks, and I really don't see any merit in us betting this hand, so we decide to check back. And action's on the button, who now goes into the tank. He thinks for quite a while before sliding in $120. Big blind then makes the fold, and now the action is back on us. I've seen this player make some pretty funky value bets on the river with like a second pair or like a weak kind of top pair. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he decided to bet like his king 9 or his king 8 or his king 10 or king jack, for example, especially versus this bet sizing. So we make a pretty standard call, but unfortunately villain shows pocket 3s for a full house. So our stack is now coming back towards break even. Right, so that now brings us to the last interesting hand of the session. In this hand, action folds to us in the cutoff, and we look down at king 10 of diamonds. So we decide to open this hand to $20, and action then folds to the big blind, who thinks for a little while before then 3-betting to $65. In this spot versus this villain, I think he pretty much has a premium hand and not much else, to be fair. Given this sizing of just like a 3x, and we're both like 100 bigs deep, we have a pretty easy call here. And so we make a pretty standard call to see a flop. The flop comes jack 9-4 with 1 diamond. Big blind then decides to c-bet for about half pot sizing to $60. With this hand class, with the gut shot to the nuts and the backdoor flush draw, we're not going anywhere. So we decide to make the call. The turn unfortunately comes like a brick. Villain, to my pleasant surprise, decides to slow down with a check. I felt like villain was really strong here, so I decided to check back and realise my equity. The river comes an offsuit queen. So we river the nuts here. Action is on the big blind, who thinks for a little while before sadly going for a check. I think we definitely want to go for a very polarizing bet here, as we've made a pretty disguised strong hand. So that's what I decided to do. I decided to make a pot size bet of $250, and now villain is visibly not happy with the sizing and the line that we've taken. He's thinking and thinking and thinking before he then says, nice hand, which I'm not really sure what that means, if he's just going to fold, but in this case he says nice hand, and then he slides in the chips. I show my hand and it's good. Right, so that concludes all the interesting hands that we played in that session. And yes, all those hands was from the same session. Our stack was going up and down and up and down and up and down. And as a result, we bought in the game for $2,000 and we cashed out for $2,651, which is a $651 profit. Very, very volatile session, a lot of fun, and just glad we ended up in profit. So just a bit of a summary over the past week. We were so close to almost having a perfect week of having winning sessions all 5 days. We ended the week up nearly $4,000, which was pretty insane. So very, very pleased with our results. Right, so I've spent quite a bit of time in this random little spot that I've had to climb through these boulders to get to, so I could get some solitude, some peace and quiet, so that I could talk through some of these poker hands. But now I think I'm going to switch the camera off. I'm going to go back up to the top floor viewing deck and just try to absorb a lot more of the awesome scenery before making my way back down the mountain. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, hope you enjoyed the scenery, and hope you enjoyed listening to the poker hands. Let's hope we can continue this gravy train into week 4 and continue crushing the games at the Commerce. Right, so thanks guys, gonna tune out now. Peace.